Wellness Wednesday, and of course, this is Lyme Disease Awareness Month, and we're joined on the programme by Maher, author of Lyme and Co. Me and Us. Anne has Lyme disease. You with me, Anne? Good morning to you.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for having me.
How are you keeping?
I'm doing good, up and down.
It's
good
up and down. That's
days.
the story of a Lyme disease sufferer, isn't it? There's no silver bullet. I mean, obviously, and we'll talk about it, the difficulties in getting diagnosis and getting the right treatment. But as I say, that's not a silver bullet. You can have good periods, bad periods, and then often people are left dealing with the consequences of having Lyme's and not actually necessarily Lyme's itself.
Yeah, it's like I'm actually Lyme free, blood test. But it's the damage that it has done in the early years before I was diagnosed that was the issues,
Yeah.
I have neurological Lyme disease, so I had facial paralysis and acute renal failure and pneumonia and a whole list of arthritis of different types. Yeah.
Can you trace this back to when it all began? Is it the mid-90s?
95, Greg. Now, I don't remember getting bitten, and that was probably one of my worst issues because I had no proof. Back then, we didn't have mobile phones to photograph everything, but I was at my nephew's wedding in New Jersey, and I came home very sick. I thought people talk about jet lag and, yourself. But I had a rash on my leg, but I was told it was ringworm. Now, at that time, even my GP didn't know about the bullseye rash.
Yeah.
So, it was a learning
And not
process.
everyone gets the bullseye rash. So
No,
if you
only
had
a
the right
small
information
percentage.
at the right time, this would have left you very lucky. But unfortunately, the awareness of the bullseye rash wasn't there.
It's all about awareness, Greg.
Yeah. That's what we're doing this. And I'll tell you, there's a high prevalence of Lyme disease here in Donegal in particular. People can go out and enjoy the wilderness, the wildlife and all of that, but particularly check yourself for ticks, particularly check young people for ticks, because primarily that is, or is it exclusively transmitted by tick bites?
Yeah, it's mostly tick bites. But look, we were trying to run a campaign to get awareness signs up, and I see in Glenveigh National Park where they're bringing it back to the wild the way it was. But they need awareness signs up in all these public areas where people are walking with young children. And
well, that was proposed, and that was a motion that was passed at council many years ago, and nothing ever come of it.
Nothing happened. I knew that, yeah. I know patients had a meeting in the council too at that time.
Yeah. Back to you, though. 1995, the onset of symptoms was rapid, and this then led to quite a long period of time, presumably from one consultant to the next, from one GP to the next. It's in your head, it's not your head, it's this, it's that, treatment for this for that. At what point, talk to me about that experience briefly, and then at what point was there actually a diagnosis?
Greg, it's very upsetting. If you're not well, you're fatigued, you have pain all over, headaches. I had terrible darts of pain up my neck into my head, and my senses were affected, my eyesight, hearing, smell, everything. And it's frustrating and so disheartening going from consultant to you get an appointment with a new consultant and you think he's going to have all the answers, but because of our negative results, it's ruled out. So I had 8 years of that, going from one to the other, and I tell you, it took a toll on my and the family. We had 4 school-going children at the time, so it wasn't easy. And
how debilitating was it for you at times over those 8 years? Long spells in hospital, in bed?
I used to collapse a lot, and I was in bed, and I'd be trying to get up in the evening before the children go home on the school bus to make things look a little bit normal. But they knew that sometimes I wouldn't make it out of the bed, and to come. My son reminded me recently, since my book was out, that they used to come down, sit around the bed and tell me about their day. And it's so disheartening because people think then, oh, it's all in your head. And I mean, I like many was offered antidepressants, but I totally refused them because the year I got sick, I did the ladies' mini marathon that year with friends. I used to line dance and set dance and loved dancing of any type. And I was fit and healthy. So how can you change so quickly from being a healthy person to dragging yourself out of bed,
Yeah, and then it feels a little bit like gaslighting too, because there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
But you're being told that there isn't, or that the science isn't saying there is. But there is. And what do you do? 8 years on, you happen to get a diagnosis in Switzerland. How did that come about?
My brother in the States was doing some research for me, and coming up to 2000, he said, you need to buy a computer. Back then, it sounds silly now, but back then we didn't even have a computer. So we got one for Christmas, and I joined a Eurolyme email group. And this patient, I always remember his first name was Bob. He had gone to Dr. Maher in Switzerland, and he had the whole of itinerary and his plan, where he stayed, how he got there. And I printed it all off, and I made an appointment and went there.
And was it instant, the diagnosis?
I spent 10 days there. I had a SPECT scan in Basel Hospital on my brain, and they phoned the doctor the day after. I was at high risk of stroke at that time. And I shouldn't even have been flying, so she started me on aspirin straight away. So she done blood tests in Switzerland. Some were sent to Germany and more were sent to the States. And I tested positive for Lyme disease and a co-infection, which is Mycoplasma fermentans, and it's native to New Jersey, where I was. Well, that's what I was told.
Okay, so that identifies potentially quite strongly where you got the bite then. So. When you talk about risk of stroke, this obviously then were you suffering from high blood pressure, or was it affecting your heart?
I had got facial paralysis in '97.
Right.
Now they call it Bell's palsy,
Many
and I was
strokes,
told
really.
I'd be grand in 6 weeks, but I still have some paralysis. And last year was a learning curve for me. Early last year, my face swelled up again as it usually had over all those years. But February, my tongue swelled up badly. And I live on my own, and I was frightened out of my life. 3 nights and 3 days, I didn't sleep properly. And I contacted Dr. Armand from Marmon Labs, who has been very helpful over the years to many of us. And he put me in touch with Dr. Rick Sector, a maxillofacial surgeon.
Yeah.
In Zarlu. So I went over there for scans and tests that I couldn't get done here in April, and I went back for the procedures in July, and I spent 2 weeks there. And would you believe, the facial paralysis has improved so much. My son noticed it straight away when I got home, and I'm off all painkillers and the low dose antibiotics I'd been on for nearly 15 years.
So you're off the antibiotics?
Yeah, I'm off that. I was on a low-dose antibiotic to try and keep the infection under control.
Yeah, and why have you been able to come off that? Sorry, in case I missed that, Anne. Is it just that?
Sorry, the maxillofacial surgeon noticed I had infection in my jawbone and my gums, so he went in there and removed all that bacterial infection, which was caused from the Lyme disease.
So, in layman's terms, was this? The Lyme disease was living in those areas potentially?
Absolutely, for all them years, so he reckons.
So anyone that's still coming positive for Lyme's disease really potentially should be looking for points of infection that may not be obvious.
Yeah, I mean, he done a special 3D scan of my face and some other ones that I can't even remember the name of them. But he showed me clearly on the screens where my issue was. And my jawbone at the paralysis side, there was really like a ball of infection in there. And he said that would have been there from, building up over the years.
So the reason we're talking here is that this is not a problem that's gone away. Unfortunately, it's a problem that has been downplayed I actually even think if I don't want to mention that. Well, I believe Leo Varadkar was questioning this in the Dáil going back some time ago. I can't remember exactly the same quote, but he wasn't exactly saying, right, okay, this is a major issue. We need to get on top of this. That's as far as I'm prepared to quote him off the top of my head. Obviously, then some within the medical profession have played it down. I think there's been a reluctance to admit this, because if this is treated as Lyme's disease and accepted on a national scale, it is going to be a significant extra burden on the health service. Talk to me about that. Is what I'm saying there accurate, or is that what's felt amongst the community?
We had a meeting with a certain health minister some years ago. It was organised by a TD friend of my late brother Bill, and they weren't having anything to do with us, because they didn't find any fault with the HSE method of testing.
That wasn't Minister O'Reilly, was it? No.
I'm not really saying who. No, okay, after him.
After. Well, you're really narrowing it down, Anne. Come here.
I gave you the year. It's in the book.
Okay, right. Well, we'll get the book then. So now we'll leave that as a teaser for the book, Anne. But again, the reason why we're speaking is that this is something we don't. I don't think we know who's affected, why they're affected. But what we do know is that if someone does get a tick bite, if the red ring rash is there or not, that at the very early stages, particularly if someone gets a tick bite and they get the right treatment early on, the consequences of this can be greatly limited, if not completely avoided. And that's why it's so important, isn't it, Anne? A
couple of local patients here that after my doctor started looking after me, a couple of patients locally went to him, got adequate antibiotics and fully recovered from after their bullseye rashes and been sick for a couple of months, and they fully recovered. And that's the proof. Early diagnosis. Look, even a clinical diagnosis, a bit of common sense. If you have, after getting bitten, you should have treatment ASAP and not wait for 6 weeks for results to come back.
Dr. Lambert, Jack Lambert, we spoke to him regularly in this show. I know he's taken an interest in long COVID now as well, which very early on when we were talking about long COVID, before I knew Jack Lambert was involved in it, I was thinking, you know, a lot of this long COVID conversation is sounding very much like Lyme's. Now, there's not a huge crossover, don't get me wrong. And then I learned that Jack Lambert had taken interest in it, and I thought, right, okay, actually, I wasn't going mad. But the problem is Dr. Jack Lambert's not going to be around forever. And I mean in terms of his professional career. He might try to do other things.
Greg, but you mentioned
go ahead.
Dr. Lambert, he actually contributed a piece to my book too. But I'm talking about signs. He's with the Lyme Resource Centre in Scotland, and they have brilliant awareness signs with QR codes of the HSE information and the Resource Centre information. And I just wish that councils around the country would contact him and erect these signs and make people aware, you know?
Yeah, but just the one other thing I was going to conclude on Mr. Lambert is what happens when he retires. There's a vacuum
we're all in trouble, aren't we?
Yeah. Okay.
Because no one has come on board to support his even with long COVID.
Yeah.
You know, they just sidetracked him, you know.
Do you think we need to now, I mean, obviously you're an individual, okay, so it would need more research and study. Do you think we need to, for those particularly long-term sufferers, that we need to find a way to ascertain if Lyme disease is hibernating or covertly in a particular organ or a particular part of the body, and that if it's eliminated, maybe people can have better outcomes, long-term futures? Have you been convinced that that's a path we need to potentially be going down now, given your experience?
Yeah. Greg, neurological Lyme is a serious issue in some diagnosis of Alzheimer's and dementia. And you know what? There's a big query now about congenital Lyme. I mean, it was brought up in the documentary Under Our Skin years ago, the infection passing from mother to baby. And there's still debates. They're to and fro in the CDC about whether it's actually. But think about that. If a mother passes the infection to a baby, so that means it's in the bloodstream. So if someone is not properly diagnosed and they happen to be a blood donor, what happens then?
Yeah.
You know, there's a European group has been in contact, and they're working on that possibility. Okay. So it's very serious.
And I hope the improvements you've experienced more recently continue. Your book, Lyme & Co. Me and Us, where is that available?
It's available on Amazon now. Okay. Because of Brexit, the paperback is only available through their German site, but the hardback is, it's complicated, Greg.
Bloody Brexit again. Okay.
Anyway, anyone can contact me anyway if I'd locate one.
Always good to speak to you. Thanks for
Greg,
helping
thanks
us,
a million, and just get the councils up with their signs and whatever.
And I know you know someone I know. Don't listen to a word they say, all right?
What?
I know you know someone I know. Don't listen to a word they say, all right?
Okay, Greg. Listen, thanks for having me, and mind the ticks.
All right, indeed, for sure, Anne. Thank you very much indeed. All right, so as I say, if you're out and about, we have to enjoy our beautiful scenery, our beautiful surroundings, but some would describe Donegal as a minefield for infected ticks. So just check yourself, or particularly check your young ones if they do get a tick bite. And watch out for the red rash that can surround the bite area. And if anyone starts sort of experiencing any symptoms, please go to your GP, but also go to your GP with the knowledge of Lyme disease, just in case they are not quite reciprocal or they're not quite interested in it. But it's knowledge is power, and that's all we're trying to do. And for goodness sakes, every county council should have signs up to just advise people of the danger. Come on and enjoy it. But just in case these series of events happen, have the knowledge to make sure you have the best possible outcomes.